Now, in the somatic sciences, in the health sciences, in the rehabilitation sciences, and in the studies of creativity, what they're really coming to, and I'm summarizing these things to try to take us together into the different aspects of this, is that the thing that allows somebody to heal physically, okay, to enter rehabilitation successfully, is the ability to become more self-aware of how they're differentiating their experience. Now, for example, somebody may have a problem with a trauma to a leg or a back or an arm in a physical sense, and that after the major incident is healed, they have to go back and kind of reclaim how to use that, okay, after nerve damage. Well, that really means extending their awareness, differentiating it back into being able to move. Well, that's what learning is, except that we do it in a different kind of space. We don't do it inside of our bodies. We do it in this subject matter or that subject matter, but it's the same process. Finally, all of the health work all the work that we're doing on the what is it that makes somebody healthy, I think you could characterize as somebody who has a learning orientation, somebody who's looking at their world, whether it's what they're consuming, or it's how they're in relationship with other people, or it's how they're performing their job, as if they're approaching it like they're going to learn how to do it. Right? They're not already stuck. I know how to do it. That's over. It's done. They're open and they're learning. They're oriented to moving forward in their lives in many ways in what we could characterize as a learning orientation. So, on peg number 2, you might say that what all of the psychologists, the self-esteem, by the way, in the self-esteem movement, the self-esteem, the driver is a good friend of mine, Assemblyman John Vasconcellos from California. We've had many conversations about the connection between education, the kind of learning that we're going to be talking about today, and self-esteem. And so the point is that all of these various disciplines in the psychological well-being field point to the same place that all these things going on in business and universities point to. They call it a little bit differently. And to capture it for the moment so that we can proceed, what I hear them saying is, you're learned. Learn about yourself. That's your key to better physical health, to better psychological health, to better, more practical ability to function in the context of your job. To be able, whatever it is you want to do, learn about yourself while you're learning about what you're doing, and that will be the way to orient yourself. So, kind of in a third jump then, research and education and learning. Like Piaget's and Papert's work on developmental stages and those that have followed since. Studies regarding what is it that allows learning to transfer or not to transfer. What are the issues involved in that? The critical thinking movement that kind of goes up and down and sweeping across the country. The Constructionism movement, again as articulated to some degree by Papert and people at MIT. The various work done on learning styles, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences and the people that have followed on that. The current bandwagon about learning to learn, and what does that mean? And what we call the cycle of engagement, which is kind of a way to look at how all of these things relate to how is it somebody stays in the flow of a learning experience. I guess I think I'd start with critical thinking. I spent about a week locked up in a kind of retreat conference environment with a group of critical thinking gurus from around the country that Apple sponsored about 2 years ago. And it was a really fascinating time as I listened to these scientists and the various things that they'd come up with to document What is it that we need to educate children towards in order for them to become more critical thinkers? For me, I mean, it was something that I've long agreed with, that one of the things that education has to do is to provide some kind of environment in which the individual can become more critically coherent, better able to abstract, better able to move through categories and classes and make appropriate differentiation in knowledge and subject material. Yeah. Okay, is that better? Sorry about that. Okay. And yet what I heard in listening, and one of the things that subsequently really helped our work, was that a lot of the assumptions of critical thinking was that what we were going to do was teach these children to effectively have this toolbox in their brain, that they could kind of open up and grab this tool and apply this tool to thinking more critically about this kind of subject or that subject. And my question, which I wasn't able to really get at the time, but it's always been my question, is who is it that's using the tool, and how do they know how to use this tool instead of that tool? How is it that whatever level we take the discussion about critical thinking to, about how somebody's going to employ this particular routine or this particular approach to solving a problem, how is it they differentiate the problem? How is it they differentiate which of the available tools? Where is that happening in them? How is it that we can really get to that level in our approach to education and our approach to critical thinking? And as I'm going to continue to go throughout the rest of the presentation, that's where, in our language, the individual learner has to differentiate what we call meaning needs. They have to be able to know the difference between following their own uncertainties and their own curiosities, because they're authentic participators in the critical thinking that's going on, as opposed to there being tangents. And I'm going to come back to this. This is real important, and I'm just kind of dropping this as I go along. But to summarize on critical thinking, that the ground of critical thinking requires that the individual who's engaged in doing it is better able to differentiate and trust how they're using the tools from which they mentally, critically think. That it's how those tools are being selected, if you will, how they're being chosen, that is at the ground of critical thinking. And the need that we have to do, the environmental need is that we create a way in which they can learn to distinguish the various tools in critical thinking. I'll make some assumptions about this group and how exposed you've been to most of the themes in this particular card, this particular slide. Constructionism, the notion that one of the preferred ways of learning is to create a project, an external strange attractor in the language of chaos, an objective that pulling myself towards doing that in order to be creative and to construct will pull me through a self-oriented gathering of all of the resources I need in order to perform at that level, which means that I'll learn as a consequence of pursuing something I'm constructing or creating. And that's, of course, a major movement. There's a lot of schools that are moving towards testing and experimenting with that. Learning style theory is something it's been around actually for a long time. It's starting to gain more wide acceptance recently. And the basic notion of learning styles, as far as I can find it really traces down to Jung's original archetypes. That there's a series of basically different orientations that a person has as they address or approach the world that they're relating to, and that the learning style theoreticians today have said that some people, and this is so obvious, that some people will learn in a way that's more kinesthetic. They need to have much more physical contact. Some people will learn in a way that's much more concrete, requiring them to have to be dealing with examples and issues that are much more real and concrete to their lives. Some people are better abstractors, and